The story begins in the heart of Eltabar, a city as much a testament to the Red Wizard's ambition as to its enduring ruthlessness. The city was famed for its intricate canal system, a marvel of magical engineering. The river Eltar flowed through Eltabar, its waters channeled into winding canals that carved the city into segments of wealth, power, and servitude. Unlike the gritty, utilitarian nature of other Red Wizard cities, Eltabar's canals were adorned with an air of grandeur. Floating flowerbeds drifted on the water, vibrant and impossibly arranged. Bridges, carved from pale stone and etched with arcane runes, spanned the waterways. At night, magical lights shimmered beneath the water's surface, casting a kaleidoscope of colors onto the surrounding buildings. Against this backdrop, the story focuses on Kalos, a red wizard, and his apprentice, Indrea. They resided in a sprawling estate that mirrored the city's duality, a place of breathtaking beauty that concealed dark secrets. Inside the estate, Indrea stood at the center of a grand chamber. The room was vast, its walls covered in tapestries depicting the history of Thay, scenes of conquest, magical experiments, and the rise of Szass Tam. At regular intervals, suits of animated armor lined the walls, standing at attention with an almost lifelike vigilance. The air hummed faintly with the presence of magic, a sign of the trials to come. Indrea was ready to face her final test, one that would determine her worth as a red wizard. Kalos observed her with a piercing gaze, his crimson robes flowing as he paced before her. He was a man of precision and power, every word and gesture calculated. "This is the culmination of your training," Kalos began, his voice smooth but edged with a subtle menace. "Each trial will test your mastery of the schools of magic. Succeed, and you will be one step closer to true power. Fail." He left the rest unsaid, but the implication hung heavy in the air. The trials were arranged sequentially, each tailored to one of the 8 schools of magic. The first trial involved defending against a barrage of magical attacks. Animated suits of armor launched bolts of arcane energy at Indrea, each one designed to bypass lesser protections. Indrea cast shield and counterspell with precision, deflecting the attacks and erecting a shimmering barrier around herself. When a final, overwhelming strike came, she summoned a globe of invulnerability, its radiant sphere absorbing the energy effortlessly. The second trial tested Indrea's ability to distinguish illusion from reality. The chamber transformed into a forest, complete with chirping birds and rustling leaves. Indrea had to find the enchanted amulet hidden within the illusion while evading illusory threats. She cast Detect Magic, her vision piercing through the false images, and navigated the maze with uncanny focus. For the third trial, Indrea was required to use divination to predict the movement of enchanted orbs that darted unpredictably around the room. With a combination of clairvoyance and true seeing, she located and captured the orbs, her movements guided by flashes of foresight. The fourth trial tested her ability to influence the mind. Kalos himself stood as her opponent, his willpower formidable. Indrea cast Dominate Person, her voice laced with magical compulsion. Kalos resisted at first, his expression one of faint amusement, but eventually yielded, nodding his approval as she released him from the spell. The fifth trial demanded raw power. Targets appeared around the room, each requiring a precise strike. Indrea unleashed a series of spells, from Fireball to Lightning Bolt, each one hitting its mark with devastating accuracy. By the end, the room crackled with residual energy, and Kalos gave a rare smile. For the sixth trial, Indrea summoned creatures to aid her in overcoming obstacles. She conjured a celestial being to battle a summoned demon, directing the celestial with unwavering command. The demon fell, and the celestial vanished as Indrea completed the trial. The seventh trial required ingenuity. Indrea transformed lead objects into gold, a task that required not only magical skill, but also a deep understanding of transmutation's principles. Her final test in this trial was to turn a section of the stone floor into water to reveal a hidden rune, which she accomplished with ease. The final trial was the most daunting, the raising of multiple undead simultaneously. Kalos watched intently as Indrea stood before a collection of corpses arranged in a circle. She extended her hands, chanting an incantation that filled the room with an eerie chill. One by one, the corpses began to rise, their vacant eyes glowing faintly with necromantic energy. As the undead stood before her, Indrea's concentration wavered for a moment, the strain evident on her face. Kalos stepped forward, his tone sharp. "Focus, apprentice. Necromancy is not just a tool. It is a command of life and death itself. Do not falter." With renewed determination, Indrea steadied herself and completed the spell. The room fell silent, save for the faint shuffle of the undead. Kalos nodded approvingly. "You have passed the trials," he declared, his voice carrying a rare note of pride. "But your journey is far from over. Prepare yourself, for what lies ahead will demand more than just skill." Indrea bowed deeply, her expression a mix of relief and anticipation. The trials were only the beginning of her path, and Kalos had much more to teach her. The scene faded, leaving the chamber still and silent, save for the faint hum of residual magic. With the trials complete, Kalos turned to Indrea, his crimson robes billowing slightly as an unseen breeze stirred the air within the grand chamber. His expression betrayed neither approval nor disapproval, only the cold precision of one accustomed to greatness. "The trials were but a stepping stone," Kalos said, his voice low but commanding. "Now, your education advances to matters of true consequence. You will accompany me to the Citadel. There, I will teach you of our greater purpose." With a practiced motion, Kalos extended his hand, and a shimmering circle of runes materialized on the floor. The teleportation circle pulsed with an otherworldly light, each rune vibrating with power. "Step into the circle," Kalos instructed. "This will take us to the heart of our dominion." Indrea hesitated for a fraction of a second. She had heard tales of the Citadel, a place spoken of in whispers even among the Red Wizards. It was said to be the seat of Szass Tam's power, an ancient fortress steeped in darkness. But there was no time for doubt. Indrea stepped into the circle, her mentor close behind. The world around them blurred into an explosion of light and sound. For a fleeting moment, Indrea felt as though she were being pulled apart and reassembled. Then, just as suddenly, the sensation ceased. They emerged in a vast, dimly lit chamber carved directly into the volcanic rock. The air was thick and heavy, carrying a faint metallic tang that seemed to seep into the lungs. Shadows danced across the jagged walls, cast by torches imbued with an unnatural crimson glow. The citadel itself loomed ahead, its towers clawing at the sky like skeletal fingers. Built long before the undead scourge had claimed Thay, the fortress exuded an aura of ancient malice. Its dark stone walls were adorned with runic inscriptions that pulsed faintly, their meaning elusive yet foreboding. As they made their way through the entrance hall, Indrea's eyes darted across the eerie displays lining the walls. Trophies of conquest and cruelty were everywhere. The skull of a dragon, its eye sockets glowing faintly with residual magic. The petrified head of a Githyanki warrior, and the frozen heart of a frost giant encased in a crystalline sphere. Each artifact told a story of power won through domination. Kalos walked with purpose, unbothered by the unsettling displays. Indrea, however, felt the weight of countless eyes upon her. Real or imagined, she could not tell. As they ascended to the upper levels, the true extent of the citadel's dark grandeur revealed itself. The halls were lined with rows upon rows of undead servants, standing in perfect formation. Skeletons, zombies, and even more advanced constructs, such as Death Knights, stood in silent vigil, their lifeless forms exuding an aura of servitude. "These are but a fraction of Szass Tam's creations," Kalos explained, his tone almost casual. "Their loyalty is absolute, their efficiency unmatched. In undeath, we find perfection." Indrea nodded, though unease flickered across her face. She had been taught to revere the undead as the pinnacle of magical achievement, yet their sheer number and the void in their eyes unsettled her. Eventually, they arrived at the heart of the citadel, a vast, circular throne room. The chamber's ceiling was so high it disappeared into darkness, and the walls were lined with towering pillars carved into grotesque shapes, faces twisted in eternal agony, their mouths open in silent screams. At the center of the room sat Szass Tam himself. The Lich Lord's presence was overwhelming, an oppressive force that seemed to crush the air from the room. His skeletal form was draped in dark robes, adorned with symbols of power too ancient to comprehend. 2 pinpricks of red light burned in his hollow eye sockets, their gaze piercing and all-encompassing. Kalos knelt immediately, and Indrea followed suit, her head bowed low. Szass Tam's voice, when it came, was a low rasp that seemed to emanate from the very walls. "You have returned, Kalos," the Lich intoned, "and you bring your apprentice. Rise and speak." Kalos rose gracefully, his composure unshaken by the immense pressure in the room. "My lord, I bring 2 matters of great importance. The first concerns a discovery made by our agents in Icewind Dale." Szass Tam's gaze shifted slightly, the burning lights in his eyes intensifying. Kalos continued. "A shard of a powerful magical obelisk has been located in the Frozenfar region. This obelisk, if the records are accurate, holds the ability to rewrite time itself. The information was extracted from a record keeper within Candlekeep by one of our operatives." For a moment, the room was silent, save for the faint crackling of magical energy in the air. Then, Szass Tam spoke again. "Such power is not to be left in the hands of lesser beings. You will retrieve this shard, Kalos. Failure is not an option." Kalos inclined his head. "It shall be done, my lord." "And now to the second matter," Szass Tam continued. "Your own ascension. You have served me well, Kalos, and proven your worth time and again. The final step awaits. You will complete the ritual and join the ranks of the Undying." Indrea's eyes widened slightly, though she kept her expression otherwise neutral. The path to Lichdom was the ultimate goal of many red wizards, a transformation that marked the pinnacle of their power. Kalos bowed deeply. "I am honored, my lord." "Ensure that the ritual is flawless," Szass Tam said, his voice carrying a note of finality. "Your failure would not be tolerated." The meeting concluded, Szass Tam's gaze lingering on Indra for a moment longer than she was comfortable with. Kalos turned and led her from the throne room, his stride unbroken. As they retraced their steps through the citadel, Kalos spoke in a low voice. "You have witnessed the apex of power, Indrea. Szass Tam embodies what we all strive for, freedom from the chains of mortality. Soon, I too shall ascend, and you may one day follow." Indrea nodded, her mind racing. The weight of what she had witnessed, and what lay ahead, settled heavily on her shoulders. The journey to the Frozenfar and the secrets of Icewind Dale loomed ahead, but so too did the even greater mystery of Lichdom. The shimmering light of the teleportation circle faded as Kalos and Indrea stepped back into their home within Eltabar. Unlike the grandeur of the citadel, the residence was refined but austere, a reflection of Kalos's personal philosophy. The walls were adorned with arcane symbols etched in silver and gold, their glow faint but constant, suffusing the chamber with an ethereal ambience. Bookshelves stretched to the ceiling, filled with tomes that covered every conceivable aspect of magic. The faint hum of unseen enchantments permeated the air, a subtle reminder of the power that dwelled within these walls. Kalos turned to Indrea, his face unreadable as always. "The time has come," he said, his tone resolute. "For centuries, our people have strived for immortality, not as feeble mortals clinging to youth, but as masters of eternity. Today, you will bear witness to the culmination of my life's work." Indrea hesitated. She had heard of the ritual of Lichdom countless times, studied its intricacies, and memorized its requirements. Yet the reality of standing on the precipice of such a transformation was overwhelming. "Master," she began cautiously, "have you no fear of what lies beyond life?" Kalos's expression hardened. "Fear is a weakness of the uninitiated. Life is fleeting, a prison of decay. True power lies in embracing eternity. You will understand this in time." Kalos led Indrea to his private sanctum, a hidden chamber deep beneath the house. The room was circular, its walls lined with runes of containment and protection that pulsed with a rhythmic glow. At the center stood a stone altar, its surface carved with intricate patterns that seemed to shift when viewed from the corner of the eye. Upon the altar sat a small, ornate box, the phylactery. "For 2 years, I have prepared for this moment," Kalos said, his voice echoing slightly in the confined space. "Every detail must be perfect. The phylactery is the vessel for my soul, and the potion must be flawless. Any deviation could lead to eternal damnation or worse." Indrea's gaze was drawn to the phylactery. It was a masterwork of craftsmanship, made from black obsidian and inlaid with veins of shimmering red. The runes etched into its surface were ancient, far older than anything she had seen before. Kalos began to recite the components of the ritual, his voice steady and precise. "The transformation requires the Lichni potion, infused with spells of incredible potency. Animate dead, cone of cold, feign death, permanency, and wraith form. Each spell imbues the potion with a fragment of its power, binding the transition from life to undeath. The final ingredient is a sacrifice, a soul offered to Orcus, the demon prince of undeath." Indrea shivered at the mention of Orcus. Though revered by the Red Wizards for his dominion over undeath, his name still carried a sense of dread. "And the sacrifice?" she asked, her voice quieter now. Kalos gestured to a small cage in the corner of the room. Within it sat a gaunt, haggard man who appeared to be in his early 40s. His eyes were wide with terror, and his lips trembled as he muttered prayers to gods who would not hear him. "This man is insignificant," Kalos said dismissively. "A wandering thief who thought to plunder from my home. His soul will serve as the final offering." As Kalos began the initial incantations, Indrea found her voice again. "Master, does the soul you sacrifice not matter? Is there no danger in invoking Orcus?" Kalos paused for a moment, turning his gaze to his apprentice. "Everything in this world comes at a cost, Indrea. The gods demand worship, the land demands labor, and power demands sacrifice. The soul of a mortal is a trifling price to pay for eternity. As for Orcus, his domain is undeath. He does not care for morality, only for those who further his influence. I am no pawn. I am an equal. My ascent strengthens his dominion, and that is all he requires." Indrea nodded, though unease still gnawed at her. "And what of the mortal world you leave behind? Will you no longer feel its pull?" Kalos allowed himself a faint smile. The mortal world is a place of beginnings, Indreya, not endings. To transcend mortality is to transcend its limitations. My concern will not be the petty struggles of men, but the eternal dance of magic and power. The ritual began in earnest. Kalos donned ceremonial robes of deep crimson embroidered with silver runes. He placed the phylactery on the altar, its dark surface gleaming under the flickering light of the room's sconces. With deliberate precision, he uncorked a vial of the Lichdom potion, a thick, dark liquid that seemed to swirl with shadows. The spells were cast in sequence, each one woven into the potion with words of power that resonated through the chamber. As Kalos incanted the final spell, Wraith Form, the potion began to glow faintly, its shadowy swirls growing more intense. Finally, Kalos raised the vial in a silent toast to the darkness, then drank its contents in a single motion. He staggered back, clutching his chest as his body convulsed. Indreya watched in wide-eyed silence as her master's skin grew pale and taut, his eyes sinking into hollow sockets that burned with an eerie red light. The room grew deathly silent, save for the faint hum of the phylactery. Kalos straightened, his movements now unnaturally fluid. His voice, when it came, was deeper, resonating with an otherworldly timbre. "It is done." Indreya stared at him, awe and fear warring within her. "You've ascended, Master. You are immortal." Kalos turned to her, his skeletal face unreadable. "Immortal, yes. But there is no rest, Indreya. Immortality is a tool, not an end. Now we turn our focus to matters of greater import, the obelisk shard. Prepare yourself. Our journey to the frozen far begins." The evening before their journey, Kalos and Indreya stood in the preparation chamber of their noble home. The room was meticulously organized with shelves lined with potions, scrolls, and other magical implements. A large map of Faerun was spread across the central table, with the Frozen Far region marked in sharp detail. Kalos had made arrangements with the Red Wizards stationed in Targos to ensure their arrival near the Reghed Glacier. Every detail of their mission had been considered, every potential variable accounted for. Kalos held up a hand, and a shimmering spellbook floated toward him. As he turned its pages, he muttered incantations, preparing protections for the icy wastes. The cold of the Frozen Far is unlike anything you have experienced, Indreya. Even the strongest of mortals succumb to its relentless grip. The spells I have prepared will shield us, but the true test will come from what lurks beneath the ice. Indreya nodded, clutching her own spellbook tightly. "Do you believe the shard is truly there, Master? A piece of an obelisk powerful enough to rewrite time?" Kalos's expression grew grave. "The records from Candlekeep are reliable, and the reports from our agents confirm the shard's location. The Netherese were capable of wonders beyond our comprehension. If the obelisk's power is even a fraction of what the legends claim, it could shift the balance of the multiverse itself. Szass Tam's interest in this artifact is well placed, and we must not fail." At dawn, Kalos and Indreya stepped into the teleportation circle. They were adorned in heavy robes reinforced with enchantments against the cold. The circle flared with crimson light as Kalos uttered the activation phrase, and the air around them shimmered and twisted. When the light faded, they found themselves in Targos, a grim and frostbitten town near the edge of the Frozen Far. The Red Wizards stationed there greeted them with formal bows, their expressions unreadable behind the hoods of their crimson robes. The local headquarters was a modest stone building fortified with wards to keep out the biting cold and wandering beasts. Kalos exchanged a few curt words with the lead wizard, confirming the coordinates of the shard's location. The Frozen Far stretched vast and barren before them, a landscape of endless white punctuated by jagged peaks and icy cliffs. The trek across the glacier was grueling, even with their magical protections. The spell protection from cold encased them in an invisible barrier that warded off the biting winds and freezing temperatures, but the sheer desolation of the landscape weighed heavily on Indrea. "This place feels lifeless," she remarked, her voice muffled by the wind. Kalos's gaze remained fixed ahead. "It is deceptive. The frozen far may seem barren, but it is a land teeming with hidden dangers. Beneath the ice, ancient evils slumber. Keep your wits about you." As they trudged onward, Kalos recounted the history of the Netherese city they sought. Ithrin, they called it, a city of unmatched splendor where wizards wielded magic that rivaled the gods. It is said that their hubris led to their downfall, as it so often does. When their flying cities fell from the skies, Ithrin was buried beneath ice and snow, its secrets entombed for millennia. Indrea listened intently, the enormity of their mission settling over her. "Do you think the shard will reveal more about the Netherese?" Kalos's tone was sharp. "It is not our place to wonder. Our task is to retrieve the shard and deliver it to Szass. Anything beyond that is irrelevant." As they approached the coordinates marked on their map, they found a jagged cave entrance carved into the side of the glacier. The opening was partially obscured by ice, but faint traces of old enchantments lingered in the air, their presence detectable to Kalos's keen senses. "This is it," he said, motioning for Indrea to follow. Inside, the temperature seemed to drop even further. The walls of the cave glimmered with frost, and eerie echoes reverberated through the tunnels. Kalos cast a light spell, illuminating their path with a soft, golden glow. They moved cautiously, their senses heightened. The air carried an unnatural stillness, broken only by the occasional drip of water from melting icicles. As they descended deeper into the cave system, they encountered the first signs of life, or rather, death. Frozen skeletons lay scattered across the ground, their twisted forms frozen in place, as if they had died in agony. Indrea knelt to examine one of the bodies, noting the deep gashes across its ribs. "These wounds are fresh, relatively speaking, perhaps 6 months old." Kalos nodded. "Gnolls, most likely. They're common in this region, though they wouldn't have ventured here without cause. Something must have drawn them." Their suspicions were confirmed moments later when a guttural growl echoed through the cavern. Indrea spun around, casting mage armor on herself instinctively. From the shadows emerged a group of twisted, deformed creatures with glowing green eyes, Nothics, their hunched forms dripping with malice. Kalos reacted instantly, raising a hand to cast Fireball. The spell erupted in a burst of flame, illuminating the cave and incinerating 2 of the Nothics. The remaining creatures lunged forward, their claws slashing at the wizards. Indrea countered with Ray of Frost, freezing one Nothic in mid-attack. Another closed in on her, but Kalos stepped forward, his skeletal hand glowing with necrotic energy as he cast Blight. The creature shrieked and crumbled into ash. When the battle ended, the cave was silent once more. Kalos inspected the bodies, noting the ancient Netherese rings on their fingers. "They were once scholars," he said grimly, "twisted by magic and time. Let this be a warning, Indrea. Power without discipline leads to ruin." Indrea nodded, her respect for her master deepening. As they pressed deeper into the caves, the air grew heavier, charged with a faint magical energy. Finally, they emerged into a vast grotto illuminated by an otherworldly glow. Before them lay the city of Ithrin, its spires and towers encased in ice, but still radiating an undeniable majesty. Kalos and Indrea stood in awe. taking in the enormity of the ancient city. The air seemed to hum with residual magic, and Indria felt a strange pull, as if the city itself were drawing energy from her. "Behold," Kalos said, his voice reverent, "the remnants of a civilization that dared to reach beyond the stars. Remember this, Indria. Even the greatest empires fall. Let us ensure that we do not share their fate." They descended into the city, their mission clear, but their hearts heavy with the weight of history. As Kalos and Indria stepped deeper into the ancient city of Ithrin, the cavern expanded into a vast, otherworldly expanse. The walls of the grotto glittered with frost, reflecting the eerie green and purple lights that illuminated the city. The lights seemed to emanate from the very structures themselves. Towers, domes, and spires that had endured millennia of frozen desolation, yet still hummed faintly with residual magic. The air was thick with arcane energy, a sensation that made Indria's skin tingle. She glanced at Kalos, who moved with steady determination, seemingly unaffected by the oppressive atmosphere. "Master, the air feels alive," she said hesitantly. "It is the essence of the Netherese," Kalos replied, his voice low and reverent. This city was built at the height of their arrogance, a testament to their mastery of the arcane. That energy lingers, even now. Be wary, it may attempt to sap your will. The pair moved through the lower streets, their steps echoing in the silent city. The structures were awe-inspiring. Massive towers of black stone carved with intricate runes, their surfaces partially encased in ice. Frozen canals wove through the city, remnants of an ancient waterway system. Bridges spanned the canals, their designs so delicate that they seemed more suited to art than architecture. Indria paused to examine a nearby building. Its entrance was marked by an archway adorned with shimmering glyphs. She reached out to touch the ice covering the glyphs, but hesitated. "Do you think these wards are still active?" "Undoubtedly," Kalos said. "The Netherese did not construct anything without purpose. Every rune, every symbol serves a function. But do not waste your energy. Our goal lies ahead." As they advanced, the city revealed more of its secrets. Scattered throughout the streets were ancient constructs, golems made of ice and stone, standing motionless. Their forms were cracked and worn, yet they exuded an aura of latent power. Indria shuddered as one seemed to follow her movements with its lifeless eyes. "They are dormant," Kalos assured her, though his tone was cautious. "But such creations often lie in wait for intruders. Do not let your guard down." The wizards soon came upon the central plaza of Ithrin, where 8 towers loomed in a perfect circle. Each tower was dedicated to one of the schools of magic, their designs reflecting their respective disciplines. The Tower of Illusion shimmered with shifting patterns of light, while the Tower of Conjuration appeared to warp and bend the space around it. Some towers were intact, their majesty preserved, while others lay in ruins, their magic dissipated. "The 9, Indria murmured, her eyes wide. "The towers that governed the flow of magic in Ithrin. But why are there only 8 here?" Kalos gestured toward the towering spire in the distance. It rose high above the others, its peak barely visible in the dim light. "The 9th stands apart, the Tower of Enchantment, the heart of Ithrin's power. It was said to house the city's greatest magical experiments. That is where we will find the shard." Indria nodded, though her gaze lingered on the ruined towers. She felt a pang of sorrow for the wizards who had once walked these halls, their brilliance now reduced to dust and echoes. The journey to the Tower of Enchantment was fraught with subtle dangers. The energy of the city seemed to grow stronger as they approached, and Indria felt it gnawing at her resolve. She gritted her teeth, focusing on the protective spells Kalos had cast earlier. The tower itself was a monolith of black stone, its surface carved with glowing runes that pulsed with a steady rhythm. A faint light shone from its highest window, casting an eerie glow over the surrounding area. Kalos led the way, his movements precise and purposeful. The entrance to the tower was marked by a massive double door, its surface engraved with intricate scenes of the Netherese conducting arcane rituals. With a wave of his hand, Kalos dispelled the wards guarding the door, and it creaked open with a resonant groan. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of ancient parchment and decaying magic. The pair ascended a spiraling staircase, passing chambers filled with long-forgotten relics, crystal orbs, enchanted tomes, and alchemical instruments. Indrea marveled at the wealth of knowledge contained within the tower, but Kalos kept her focused. These are distractions. The shard is our only concern. At last, they reached the highest chamber. It was a circular room bathed in a pulsating purple light. In the center of the room floated a spindle of black crystal, its surface etched with faint, glowing runes. The shard radiated an overwhelming aura of power, and Indrea felt her breath catch in her throat. As they approached the shard, a vision overtook Kalos. His eyes widened as images flooded his mind. Vast floating cities suspended above the clouds, titanic giants wielding immense magical artifacts, and a great cataclysm that shattered the heavens. For a moment, he stood frozen, lost in the memory of a civilization long gone. Indrea reached out to steady him. "Master, what do you see?" Kalos blinked, his composure returning. "The past, a glimpse of what was lost. But we must remain vigilant. This shard is not unguarded." As if summoned by his words, a low groan echoed through the chamber. In the shadows near the far wall, a grotesque figure stirred. It was a floating skull, its surface cracked and blackened with age. In one of its eye sockets glimmered the shard they sought. The demi-lich let out a bone-chilling wail, its voice a symphony of despair. Kalos immediately raised a hand, casting counterspell as the creature unleashed a wave of necrotic energy. Indrea followed suit, hurling magic missiles that struck the demi-lich with pinpoint precision. The battle was fierce, the room a whirlwind of arcane energy. The demi-lich summoned spectral servants to its aid, but Kalos obliterated them with a well-timed fireball. Indrea conjured a barrier of force to shield them from the creature's devastating attacks. Finally, Kalos cast a spell that paralyzed the demi-lich, freezing the demi-lich in place. He stepped forward, his skeletal hand reaching into the creature's eye socket to claim the shard. The moment he touched it, the room was filled with a blinding light, and the demi-lich let out one final anguished scream before crumbling to dust. As they exited the tower, the shard safely in their possession, Kalos and Indrea paused to take in the city one last time. The weight of their mission settled over them, and Indrea spoke hesitantly. "Do you think we could ever achieve what the Netherese did, Master? Could we ever reach their heights?" Kalos's gaze was distant. "The Netherese reached for the heavens and they fell. We will not repeat their mistakes, but with the shard, perhaps we will achieve something greater, a future free from the constraints of time itself." With those words, they left Ithrin, the city's ancient secrets echoing in their minds as they prepared for what lay ahead. Indrea and Kalos paused once more, glancing across the vast Reged glacier. Kalos then spoke, his voice proud and stern. "Onward we press. Vast treasures, both physical and tangible, lie before us, Indrea. Let's go